All right, everybody. Today on the show, we have multi-time world champion, former WWE superstar, and current NWA champion. We have the Iron Man, Rob Conway. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, man, I appreciate you having me on the show. Been looking forward to it for a long time.
Awesome. Now, you're hot off a tour from Japan. Now, while you were in Japan, you represented the NWA. What were some of the highlights of your time there?
And the whole trip was a highlight, but getting to some of the moments I really had been looking forward to was finally getting in the ring and wrestling a match with, well, they were all tag matches, but getting in with Tanahashi was the IWGP Heavyweight Champion was something I was looking forward to, as well as for the first time getting in ring with Makabe, former IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Uh, Getting to wrestle with Okada, AJ Styles for the first time that I'd ever been in the ring with him. So it's quite a few things I've been looking forward to, and then the whole New Japan Pro Wrestling experience is one of a kind, and it's the best. You know, getting to go over there with the NWA is the best thing going today.
Now, it was just announced that the NJPW, New Japan, has gotten a USA TV deal. How do you think the Japan style of wrestling will relate to American viewers?
I hadn't heard that they had a deal here in the states. I'd heard that they were working with Ring of Honor and doing some stuff on uh, one of the television channels called Access, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but it was going to be programming that's from 2000, starting from 2013. So, but the idea that the fans over here will be able to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling in that style, I think it's something that they are going to love. I hope that they get some, brand new programming
Hmm.
over here, as soon as they do there. But just the hard hitting athleticism that New Japan Pro Wrestling brings, similar to what I grew up watching with the NWA, the Ric Flair Four Horsemen NWA, were more than sports entertainment. Pro wrestling, it very athletic, very competitive. Most of the action took place in the ring, and any interviews were before and after the matches, directly related to what they were doing, uh, you know, in the ring. So that's what New Japan Pro Wrestling is. It's a very athletic, hard-hitting style where they bring people from all over the world. So I think that the American audience will just eat it up.
Awesome. Now, I read an article, it was back in, I think, 2004, that actually kind of talked about how you decided to become a pro wrestler. But for fans that may not know about that, could you tell us, just a little bit of how you? I think the story went that you kind of just almost stumbled into it a little bit because you stopped by to see it. So is that somewhat correct?
You know what? Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, I grew up watching it, and had even used to go to the matches at the Louisville Gardens. Starting probably when I was in like the fourth grade.
Hmm.
And at WrestleMania 3, I went to Louisville Gardens to watch it on simulcast. So, I mean, I was a
Wow.
fan. And then as I got older, I kind of fell out of it a little bit in high school. I was just really busy playing sports, and I got a basketball scholarship and really got into lifting weights and doing amateur bodybuilding. It started at like 18. And then wrestling got really hot again. The mid 90s, 96, the NWO and the Generation X had really just gotten hot, and you couldn't hardly keep from seeing wrestling all over the place. And I was watching it on Monday nights and taping one and watching the other. And um, people used to just ask me if I was a wrestler because I looked like a wrestler back then. I was 240 pounds, a young guy with earrings, and just really involved in weightlifting. And then I was driving to work, and I looked over to my left, and there was a sign that said the Danny Davis School of Professional Wrestling, live wrestling, 7 o'clock on Sundays. And I thought, wow, because I'd always wanted to do it, but I mean, where's a guy from New Albany, Indiana, going to become a professional wrestler? And then, bam, there it was. So I stopped in and watched one of the shows. I remember laughing because, none of the guys were in particularly good shape. And somebody had lost a match, I guess, the week before. So the first match I saw, a guy came out with a big baby bottle and a bonnet wearing a diaper over his gear. So I thought, oh, man, what's this? It's nothing like the stuff that I see on TV. But then I knew Danny Davis from the USWA. I mean, I'd followed his career and was a fan. So I met with him and ended up signing up and then kind of went from there.
Now, like you just said, like when you started training, you were already a pretty athletic person. So, um, with that being said, what was the hardest part of training for you?
The mentally, I
Yeah.
think more than physically, the training.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it, the hardest part about the training was falling down. I mean, it's not natural to fall down.
Yeah.
When you fall down, you usually try to stop yourself from falling down or keep from falling down. Or if you fall down, somebody comes and helps you up in
Yeah.
regular life. But in wrestling, falling down is pretty much how you make a living, get back up. But mentally, I would say just the the idea of there's a little bit of a hierarchy that when you get into the wrestling business, the guys that have been doing it longer than you obviously have to show them respect and things like that, and just learning to your place, when you begin, was something that I think, because I was a better athlete, I was bigger, I was more muscular, I was, than everybody there. So that was kind of difficult at first to take a back seat to some of these other guys.
Yeah.
I really felt like locally I was already well known. I played basketball in the area. You probably got 3,000-4,000 people at high school games. I mean, played on pay-per-view in high school, so everybody knew who I was. So just in the area. So just like I said, kind of taking a back seat and knowing that if it's not your time yet was hard at first. But I mean, that was just in training. I mean, but because of my look and things like that, like my first match, I was the main event and pretty much always was in OVW or close to it.
Yeah.
I teamed with Nick Dinsmore in my first match, and we teamed quite a bit over the next 6 years.
Yeah. Now, like you said, you were a legitimate superstar in OVW. You won the heavyweight title several times as well as the tag titles. What title reign for you was your favorite while you were in OVW?
Being the heavyweight champion, was individually was always fun for me. I
Hmm.
mean, as well as being a tag team, it was just every tag reign that I had, and I think I've had 11 tag team title reigns over the years in OVW. I was always a fan favorite,
Hmm.
but every time I was the heavyweight champion, for some reason, I was always, uh, on the other side of the fence. So
Yes.
that was a lot of fun for me, especially in my OVW days. So that, and I got to wrestle some great guys, during the time that both tag team and, the heavyweight champion. But I think ultimately everybody likes being out there by themselves and being put in a position where, the company's looking toward you to be, uh, the guy for whatever, to carry the ball and try to help them get TV ratings and put some butts in seats.
Yeah, and when you were in OVW, there was like you've already mentioned Nick Dinsmore, who's the f former Eugene. But when you were there, who were some of the guys that were also breaking in at the same time as you?
When I first got there, Doug Basham was pretty new to the pro wrestling, who was in WWE eventually. Uh, there was a guy named Damager who later became Danny Basham
Uh-huh.
on WWE's television. And then that's really, the four of us were really kind of the core group that just kind of started there. But then over the years, I mean, just who's who of who's in professional wrestling over the last 15 years kind of started there or came through there. I mean, a lot of guys just got their start there, or they signed them to developmental contracts and with little to no experience, and then they came there for their training. So I mean, there's a lot of guys that I've seen become big time superstars that, I seen them lock up and learn to run the ropes for the first time. And the one thing that really kind of bolds true, because people always ask me, because they know that I was there when John Cena and Randy Orton and Brock Lesnar and Batista all first started, is
Yes.
those guys worked extremely hard. I mean, nothing was ever handed to them. And they were, so that's the one thing about all the guys that seem to have made a big impact in the wrestling business, is that people don't know what hard work they put in, behind the scenes. Nothing was ever handed to them. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for all those guys.
Yeah, I keep mentioning Nick Dinsmore. I really wish that he would have gotten to wrestle in WWE as Nick the Machine Dinsmore, because I've watched a lot of OVW, and he is very underrated as far as I'm concerned. But you had a lot of feuds with him. Were those some of your favorite singles matches while you were there?
Yeah. I mean, me and him have wrestled each other like, you know, close to 170 times,
Gosh.
and then we teamed up probably a couple hundred times. So, I mean, I wrestled into Nick Dinsmore, wrestled into Eugene, and just, and we teamed together. We actually knew each other before we started wrestling. So, I mean, to wrestle him in a warehouse, in front of 100 people on a Sunday afternoon in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and then to wrestle him with, Taboo Tuesday or overseas tours on Monday Night Raw and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty amazing that, we grew up 10 minutes from each other. But we share a lot of experiences. A lot of times when people think of, Nick, they think of Rob. So it's like Nick and Rob. If I go into a restaurant, he was there. Hey, Nick was here yesterday. In the wrestling business, if I see someone, they'll say, "Hey, how's Nick doing?" And he gets the same thing, because we're kind of thought of, in the same sentence.
Okay. Um, Now you were arguably best known for your time in WWE. You were spending a lot of time in OVW. When you got called to the WWE, was it told to you that you were going to be part of this tag team, or were you brought in with the idea that you were going to have a singles career?
Well, initially, I was brought up to the WWE a week before I debuted in La Resistance,
Okay.
and I was going. I had kind of shoulder length blonde hair. It was curly, and I used to wear white and pink trunks. I mean, I tried different combinations over the years, but the creative staff saw that, and they brought me up and decided they were going to put me with Victoria and Stevie Richards, and that I was going to be the love interest of Victoria on television, and they were going to call me the Golden Boy. And this was set in stone. I was on the road, and I was going to debut that night and wrestle Tommy Dreamer. And then about 6 o'clock at night, the show starts at like 7:30. Heat and then Raw. John Laurinaitis came to me and said, in his voice, he said, "Hey, Robbie, we decided to shit can your match tonight, and you're not on the road." And I was just like, "What? That's like horrible news. I've been working for this for a long time." He was like, "Oh, we're going to bring you back next week. We think we might have something better for you." So they flew me to Raw the next week and set me in a chair and cut off all my hair and gave me a Air Force uniform, and I came out of the crowd and helped La Resistance, leave the Dudleys laying. But once that started, they told me that I would be a singles guy and I would be affiliated with La Resistance.
Hmm.
And that was the plan. So I didn't have La Resistance gear or anything. They told me that I could wear whatever I wanted, just don't wear pink. I said, "Okay, great. I got to go buy new stuff." But so in the meantime, about a couple weeks later, Sylvan had been diagnosed with a couple broken bones in his neck.
Uh,
And when that happened, Jim Ross told me to get Sly's, what's what we call it, Sly, would get his robe and his gear and from him, and then get some more gear made to fit me, and would just slide in with Renee until Sylvan got healed, and that's what happened.
Now, I once again think that the tag team that you guys had was very underrated. You guys were significantly I don't like using the terms, but you guys were very hated as a tag team, and you're even the team itself was three-time tag team champion. Where do you rank yourself amongst some of the greater tag teams in the WWE?
Well, I mean, I think underrated because we're never mentioned like in the top 50 and stuff like that. But for the years that we were there, we were the glue that held the tag team division together. It was
Yes.
might have been held together by a string, but we were that string because we were the only tag team for a long time. Um, After WrestleMania 20, they pretty much disbanded all the tag teams. And if you look at, there was two like four-way tag matches at WrestleMania 20, and then after that, pretty much everybody disbanded. Even me and Renee split up when they did the draft,
Hmm.
and then Sylvan came back. So, and we didn't really have anybody to go against. We had to like make other teams. So we wrestled, you know, Rhino and a whole bunch of different opponents until he finally like got Tajiri as his partner.
Yeah.
And we wrestled Hurricane and Rosie, who weren't really a team until, you know, prior to that. They kind of formed while we were there. And then like even Chris Benoit and Edge were not a team. They were just two top guys, and they put them together, made them tag team champions, and then we went against them. And then over the next like 6 months, we kind of went against them at 2 or 3 pay-per-views. And that, like the very first night we wrestled them, Edge accidentally speared Benoit, and we won with a finish, you know, Eagle Trip. But that set in motion Edge's, you know, heel turn
Hmm.
that catapulted his career, you know, to where he became multi-time champion. So, yeah, I mean, we really, if you wanted to get someone, it didn't matter who we wrestled, they were going to cheer for him. So if you needed someone like, hey, we want to get this guy popular, okay, we'll put him in the tag team and throw him out there against La Resistance. So we'll have him, you know, we'll have them go out there and talk and have his music interrupt. So, because it doesn't matter who it is, your music could interrupt and they'd cheer for you.
Yeah.
And then eventually when they decided to split us up, it wasn't because we lost our appeal. I mean, we were, to this day, we could still be getting booed out of the arena. It was never a problem.
Hmm.
It was the fact that they brought that Muhammad Hassan in, and they didn't want to have two different times on the show where people were kind of anti-American or, you know, chanting USA.
Yeah.
So we would go out, you know, they really had big plans for him, so he would be on like later in the night at the live events, and we'd be on, you know, fourth or fifth, and you know, we were better at what we did than what he was, because he was a good guy who was an OVW who teamed with me there in the Revolution as Mark Magnus, but he, you know, he's Italian, so he really didn't feel kind of the character that he did, so we did it better than him.
Now you mentioned the Sylvan and Renee both. I don't know if it's how known it is, but how did you get along with these guys? Were they both good to work with?
I got along with them great. They didn't get along with each other very well, but I got along with each of them individually really good. I mean, Renee, originally, when I started teaming with him and Savon, Renee was only 19 years old.
Gosh.
You know, he was 265 pounds and 6'3" and looked like a grown man. He was only 19 years old. So it was harder teaming with him originally just because not really in ring so much as the fact that he couldn't rent a car
Hmm.
and, you know, just, you know, you couldn't, if you, you know, at nighttime, you couldn't just stop at a bar. You had to, you know, I mean, not that we weren't really drinkers or anything, but, you know, certain places he couldn't get in if you needed to go, wanted to go in. So, you know, and he traveled with us. But, I mean, as far as in-ring ability, you know, Renee had been doing it for a long time, so he was actually a better wrestler than Sylvan initially.
Hmm.
And then after Sylvan came back from his neck injury, I mean, he'd just been, you know, watching wrestling nonstop like a sponge. So when he came back, I mean, we just gelled and I teamed with him longer than I teamed with Renee.
Hmm.
But yeah, they didn't get along very good. They're both from Quebec, but different parts, uh, and so I guess there's some type of rival there amongst where they're from.
So after La Resistance split up, you started your solo career. You were repackaged and started to become the con man. Did anybody give you a goal for that character, or were you supposed to kind of come up with one on your own?
Well, the character initially, there was me and one of the creative staff had talked about creating kind of a Rick Rude type of character. I had always been into working out, and so I thought, well, I was told that if you're going to go on your own, you can't look exactly the same and just become a singles guy. You
Hmm.
can't, you got to come up with something, a different look and something unique. And so I got with one of the creative staff, not the lead creative person on Raw. He was off making, writing a movie. So there was another guy who was kind of in that spot. So we kind of came up with the idea of having a kind of a Rick Rude type of character, that, and it wasn't initially ever supposed to get hated.
Hmm.
Uh, they were just wanted to get noticed. That was the idea: is to come out, be different than other characters, and people don't necessarily have to boo you or cheer you, just one or the other. Because I never really did anything. I didn't jump people from behind. I didn't talk bad about anybody else. The whole idea, the guy was just really into himself,
Hmm.
and I would pick up some wins and just get noticed. And then when the time was right, I would, um, finally get something we could sink our teeth in, and eventually, you know, be someone who would be hated. But I was kind of well on my way when the lead writer came back, the creative staff person.
Hmm.
So the lead guy came back, and it wasn't his idea. He had nothing to do with it. So when he came back, I mean, you're naturally, like, a lot of the guys will go to the creative staff with ideas,
Hmm.
and the hardest part for them is it's almost like you have to give them half an idea and hope that they like it enough to finish it. Because if Vince says, "Hey, whose idea is this?" It's great. They can't say, "Oh, well, it's this wrestler's idea," because
Yeah.
then what did you know?
What are you
If
doing
you're
here?
getting paid to be creative, then and the wrestlers are creative, then what do they need you for? Because you don't really make any money for them. All you do is come up with ideas. And so it wasn't his idea, and he came back and he told me, he goes, "I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. It's not something that it wasn't something he wanted to write for."
Yeah.
So after he came back, uh, I actually had talked to him about turning babyface. I said, "Man, I come to the arenas and people have to do it, the Conway signs, and out back, and I said, other than I always hated my music. I always thought it was a catchy tune, but it's not something you want to come to the ring. It actually kills the crowd. I don't know, Triple H could come out to that music, and they would, I mean, they're not gonna when you hear. I used to always say it's not exactly time to play the game. I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
not glass breaking, and it doesn't give you an attitude. It's kind of like, what's this?
Yeah.
I don't get it. Uh, so, and that's another thing. When I told him initially, I said, "I don't really like that music." It's almost like I got some backlash for not liking the music. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, nobody would like that. It's just goofy.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit the character that we were trying to go for. I think that the music kind of shaped the character. Like, no matter what you thought of this guy, when he first walks out that music, you get your own, like, oh, this guy must be silly or goofy or something.
Yeah.
So after that, if you only are out there for 4 minutes, you can't hardly turn it around.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, the creative guy came back, and after that, I never won another match. It
Yikes.
wasn't his idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
not that it matters, but I mean, as far as nobody ever became, the top guy by not winning.
yeah, no, no. Um, you know, the it's been a long time since you were released from WWE, and you've went into detail about that, but uh, in around 2013, you landed in National Wrestling, the NWA. You've been doing really well there, and you're currently the world heavyweight champion. Do you think that this is the best run of your career?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had a really good run in OVW, but it was a much smaller scale,
Hmm.
and it had a lot of fun there. But yeah, the when I left the WWE, I immediately got with the NWA. I
Hmm.
started wrestling for the NWA. It was based out of California at the time, and got to wrestle in some big arena shows. It's amazing. There's some big events out there that like most of the country never hears about or sees. I mean, we had a show in Atlanta that drew 8,000 for the NWA back in around 2008. I mean, just 3,500, 4,000 places like that in Texas, and I wrestled for them till about 2009. Then I still did some NWA stuff, but it wasn't my primary uh, company that I worked for. And then around 2013, they got a new leadership, and I had already been wrestling quite a bit in Texas, and a few of the places that I wrestled in Texas and had established myself there had joined. They qualified and joined for the NWA, and then so yeah, I mean once I got with them, and then immediately, almost as soon as I won the championship, I went straight to Japan and wrestled on one of their pay-per-views against Kojima, and things went great there. And then they just kept inviting us back. So I've been I've done 9 tours of Japan since um, June of 2013.
Wow. Um, Now you've got a lot of wrestling knowledge. And we hope this isn't soon, but when your time in the ring starts to wind down, would you still like to be involved in wrestling, whether it be training or, behind the scenes or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean I can't see myself ever getting away from wrestling at
Hmm.
some capacity. It's what I like. I mean you know the things that most people would have as hobbies are things I've managed to be able to make a living doing. And people always ask me, they say, "What have you been up to?" I say, "Working out and wrestling." I mean, I've been saying it, you know, for 17 years. That's what I like. I mean, I always watching it on YouTube or Daily Motion, or or still watching DVDs of wrestling when I'm not doing it. I mean, it's something that I just really like, and trying to. It's like you can never stop learning and trying to figure out what makes people react, and what looks good. Just more about the history you know of wrestling. I mean, I just kind of consumed in all aspects of it. So the idea of just putting it away and going and doing something else, it just it's one of those things where today I was at the gym doing arms, and in between sets I was just started thinking about a match that's coming up, and I was like, man, I got to get back to focusing on this workout, and I didn't think about that the rest of the day.
Okay,
The
now,
one thing that I would like to say is that the wrestlers are the biggest wrestling fans out there. Because a lot of times people come up and go, man, you don't know what a big wrestling fan I am. I'm like, yeah, I've dedicated the last 17 years of my life to this. And I think about it all the time, and I've driven thousands and thousands of miles and uh, to do it. So, yeah, I mean, it's one thing when you love it so much that you're willing to drive to go to an event. It's another thing when you love it so much you're willing to pretty much, take 15 or 1600 beatings
mhm,
because you love it doing it. So I mean, that's what. So the guys that I know that wrestle are the biggest fans that there is. So they don't just mail it in. Everybody at the top level loves it.
okay. Now is there anything you're currently, any shows or anything like that that you want any of the fans to know about?
Well, coming up, I've got an NWA title defense. It'll be the first time that I've ever been in the ring with the Gift, Jason Kincaid, and that's on December 27th at Smoky Mountain Wrestling in Kingsport, Tennessee, at the Kingsport Civic Auditorium, which is kind of a place that's synonymous with wrestling in the southeastern Tennessee area. So that's a big one coming up.
Is there
So
now? Do you have? I know that it's a world of social media today. So are there? I mean, do you also have like Twitter and all of those?
yeah, I can be reached, or you can check me out at the Rob Conway on Twitter, and then my Facebook is Rob Conway 2,
Okay.
uh, and that's and then I have Robert Thomas Conway Facebook also, which AOL had made me change the names of some of my pages, and then for appearances, I can be reached at conwaynwa@gmail.com.
Okay. Now we're winding down the interview. We're coming to the end, and we do this with everybody. It's the lightning round. Everybody calls it something else, but whatever comes to mind, feel free to tell us here. We got a few quick questions, and then we'll let you get back to being Rob Conway. So the first one that I'd like to ask is, you're a self-professed wrestling historian. What do you consider the most historic moment in wrestling history?
Wow. Um, and that's what a great question to think of one moment. Hmm. Probably when WCW sold to the WWE.
Okay.
That may be historic in a negative way for the entire business,
Okay.
and
Now,
WCW went out of business.
now you're from Indiana. I myself am also a Hoosier. So, what, where do you rank yourself among famous Hoosiers?
Uh, Hoosiers in general or wrestlers?
I would say in general, you got to be up there with, you got to be at least more popular than Orville Redenbacher, somewhere around Larry Bird, if I had to guess.
Uh, well, I think a lot of the times people don't know who's from Indiana,
Yeah.
who's famous, like Axl Rose and Michael Jackson. Um, I think even Colonel Sanders might
Hmm.
have been from Indiana. Uh,
But they didn't beat anybody.
yeah, how much Axel might have beat somebody
Yeah.
at some point. I would say in New Albany, there's two people who are well known. Me and Fuzzy Zeller,
Hmm.
the golfer. So, and I know I rank number two to him as of right now. There's actually a book out for famous people from New Albany. Um, I would say I'm in the sentence with probably maybe top 40.
Awesome. Awesome. You were a part of a great tag team. Who do you think the best tag team of all time is?
I know my favorite tag team growing up was the British Bulldogs.
Okay.
So there you can't. It's really hard to rank such, because people are different eras and everything. But I know I grew up watching them and enjoying them, so I had to put the British Bulldogs.
Okay. What is your favorite piece of Rob Conway merchandise?
The action figures.
Okay.
There's
Uh,
an action figure in particular. It was only released in Montreal, and it's a 6 pack with me, Renee, Randy Orton, John Cena, Shelton Benjamin, and Charlie Haas.
awesome. Um, who is your favorite wrestler in the world today?
Well, in the WWE, my favorite guy to watch is a friend of mine, Damian Sandow.
Okay.
And then in New Japan, I think uh, one of my guys that I really enjoy watching him wrestle is Tanahashi.
Hmm.
So, and then in the NWA, the guy to watch, the up and coming guy to watch is Jack Stane.
Okay. All right. And lastly, um, pro wrestling injuries are a huge topic of discussion these days. What was your worst pro wrestling injury?
Just 2 years ago, I tore my left bicep in a match, tore and rolled up my arm, and it
Oh,
was actually in the same ring in San Antonio that less than a year later I ended up winning the WBO World Heavyweight Championship. So when that happened, I knew it happened immediately, and I thought that that might be my last match right there because I didn't know I had to have surgery, and it took like 6 months of rehab to come back. But that when that happened, I thought this could be it. And I didn't know if my arm would ever look the same, or if it would function right. But yeah, that and it happened. I was already had been wrestling for years and years, so yeah, it was a big scare.
okay. Well, we definitely appreciate you coming on the show today. Definitely check out Rob Conway. He's hopefully coming to a town near you. And anytime that you'd like to come back and tell us anything else that you're up to, please let us know.
No, I appreciate it. It's great being on there. I said before, you can reach me at Rob Conway, and you've been a pleasure to talk to, and I look forward to coming back.
All right.